down and then kneel as he came by, and he would put his hand on everyone's head as he went by. Everyone was just waiting for Srila Prabhupada to touch their head. And if he would miss something, that person would run around and get at the head of the line somehow or other, so that Srila Prabhupada would touch your head. I know he knew what was going on. He was just smiling. Just one note about Guru Puja. I'm always trying to get everybody to come closer when it's time for Guru Puja. And I can guarantee you, at the times when Prabhupada was in the temple, then the devotees weren't leaning back 50 feet or 100 feet. All the devotees were going up as close as possible to Prabhupada, and brahmacharis were fighting with the sannyasis to get closer, and maybe the women were fighting with at least in 1968, the women were probably fighting with the sannyasis to get closer to. I'm sure if Radhanath Swami comes here or somebody's spiritual master comes here, don't stand far back in the temple room for Guru Puja. You go up close. And if he would miss someone when he went by, then that person would run around and get at the end of the line, somehow or other, that Prabhupada would touch your head. I know he knew what was going on. He was just smiling. And sometimes he would just make a point to touch everyone's head as he went by. And sometimes he would only touch 2 or 3 people in the whole line. It was just a game that we all played. Then he would get into the car. That's a relationship with a spiritual master generally is very serious. But sometimes if he's playing a game, then you should join in the game and have fun with the spiritual master. Then he would get into the car and everyone would just converge on the car. Then after he left, everyone had something to say like, did you see him do this? And did you hear him say that? Everyone was so happy about Srila Prabhupada. We would always talk about him. He was the center of our lives. And I remember that coming to the temple in the beginning, in 1970, that you come into the temple and all the devotees would talk about Krishna and they'd talk about Prabhupada. He said this, he did that, he's in this temple now, he's visiting that temple, and he's the center of everyone's life. As a representative of the Los Angeles community, Tamal Krishna visited daily. Prabhupada was especially interested in the Sankirtan party. The traveling chanting party Prabhupada had requested Tamal Krishna to form had been holding kirtans in the streets of San Francisco and Seattle. From the beginning, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was a big organizer. He's a very authoritative person. Upon their arrival in Los Angeles, Prabhupada asked them to stay as a part of the new Los Angeles Center. Now, every day, more than 30 devotees were going downtown, distributing back to Godheads and chanting for 8 hours. Besides organizing the daily Sankirtan, Prabhupada Tamal Krishna also maintained relations with police and city authorities. It was a success. Los Angeles was leading ISKCON in this new Sankirtan practice, and repeatedly Prabhupada stressed this as the most important function of ISKCON. Because Tamal Krishna was Prabhupada's man for organizing the devotees, Prabhupada carefully trained him in managing. Sometimes Prabhupada would show Tamal Krishna a letter he had received asking for his response. Tamal Krishna would suggest a reply, then Prabhupada would explain the particular answer this letter required. Prabhupada usually ate his lunch alone, but one day he invited Tamal Krishna to have lunch with him. When the prasadam was served, Tamal Krishna asked, "How should we eat, Prabhupada? Which things should we eat first?" "In eating," Prabhupada replied, "there is no hard and fast rule." But Tamal Krishna watched his spiritual master take prasadam, knowing there was an art to it. Whatever Prabhupada would eat, Tamal Krishna would also eat, bite by bite. Prabhupada encouraged him to eat to his full satisfaction. After eating and washing, that's our prayer. Let us take this prasadam to our first full satisfaction. And the beginning of that prayer is really good. This material body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are networks of paths leading to death. Quite a prayer. Most religions, they don't start a prayer like that, but we do. So Prabhupada was really training Tamal Krishna from the very beginning, and because he recognized in them leadership skills, and Tamal Krishna was very attentive to everything Prabhupada did. He extremely intelligent person, and is extremely attentive, even down to what to eat and how to eat, and every detail he learned from Prabhupada. Even in the beginning, Prabhupada was showing him letters and asking him, "What do you think we should answer? What do you think I should answer to this devotee's letter?" And definitely, let's see. After eating and washing, Prabhupada said, "Now let us talk a little." The printers in Japan, he explained, had agreed to take a contract for printing Back to Godhead on the condition that ISKCON order a minimum of 20,000 magazines a month. "They are first-class printers," Prabhupada said, "so you just give me a guarantee. You give me a guarantee. I want you to take 5,000 magazines a month for Los Angeles. If you do, then I will arrange for San Francisco, New York, and London to each take 5,000. You just give me this guarantee." It's a big guarantee, 5,000. They weren't doing anywhere near that number of Back to Godheads in a month to that point. I don't know, a few hundred or maybe 1,000 a month, but Prabhupada said, "I want you to give me a guarantee." So without even, Tamal Krishna Maharaj he just agreed, "We'll do it." And he knew that he would have to figure out how to do it after he said, "We'll do it." I'm sure he didn't know how they would do it when he agreed to do it, but he agreed. Immediately, Tamal Krishna promised Prabhupada to distribute 5,000 magazines a month. It was an important moment. Now, Prabhupada said, "I can take the initiative to print such a big order. Otherwise, I could not do it." On another of Tamal Krishna's daily visits, he showed Prabhupada a painting just completed by Murlidhar, a new devotee. The picture showed the spiritual sky and its spiritual planets with the material world in one corner. Prabhupada liked the painting. Referring to the painting, he explained to Tamal Krishna the plan of the total creation. Krishna, he began, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is situated in the topmost planet, Krishna Loka. Around Krishna Loka are innumerable spiritual planets. residences of the four-handed Narayan expansions of the Lord. The planets are all situated in the unlimited effulgence of the Brahman sky, which is actually the effulgence of Krishna's body. And in one tiny corner of this sky exists the entire material world. The material world emanates from Lord Krishna's expansion, Mahavishnu, who lives in the causal ocean, emanating innumerable material universes from his breathing and from the pores of his body. That's why it's described like that. That we're also in the spiritual world. It's not that the material cosmic manifestation is somehow separate from the material world. It's compared to if there's a beautiful, bright, sunny day, and there's one cloud somewhere in the sky, and that's the comparison to the Mahat Tattva. It's just one little cloud in the Brahmajyoti, and within that cloud, it's dark. So, but it's in the Brahmajyoti. We're in the Brahmajyoti right now. We're not outside of the spiritual world, and yeah. So, but within this one little cloud, it's very dark. Let's see. Within each universe, Mahavishnu then further expands as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who generates the planets within the universe. The Earth planet is situated among the middle planetary system, and in comparison to the entire universe, is as insignificant as a speck of dust. And yet on this speck of dust, there are 7 continents. Prabhupada continued to explain, directing Tamal Krishna's attention to the painting. And out of all these different continents, Prabhupada said, there is America. And even within America, there are so many cities. And one of those cities is in Los Angeles. So here in Los Angeles also, there are many, many places. And then out of them, one is this temple, our temple. And in this temple, there is one Tamal Krishna, and he is thinking that he is very, very important. Tamal Krishna was startled. Prabhupada looked at him and simply smiled. Tamal Krishna, he didn't know that it was going to end up with him. And Prabhupada was very good at bringing universal lessons from Krishna consciousness down to each devotee's, each person's individual situation. And each one of us, we're thinking, oh, look at me, I'm devotee, look how important I am in this temple and to the preaching of the ISKCON movement. And of course, what we're doing is the most significant thing to each one of us. Our service is our life and soul, but we're just tiny little servants in ISKCON, just trying to do our little part in taking care of Prabhupada's movement. And each devotee is, although we are tiny, each devotee is important to Krishna. It's like a king, or a king he's so much power in a country, but he has one little baby, and the baby is nothing compared to all the physically to all the affairs of the country, the kingdom that he's governing, and all the big ministers who are coming to see him. He's just a little baby, but to the king, he's extremely important. So we are tiny, we are insignificant, but each devotee is very important to Krishna. And really that's all that matters. Each devotee is important to their guru, although we're tiny. In Los Angeles, Govindadasi continued as Prabhupada's secretary, with Upendra, his servant, giving him massage and cooking for him. Govindadasi's husband, Gaurasundar, had reluctantly left to open a center in Hawaii. It had begun with Prabhupada's talking about Hawaii as a very likely place for a temple. There's a lot of hippies in Hawaii. And a lot of, at that time, there's a place, people are going, yeah, let's go to Hawaii. We'll live on the beach and we'll be free. I know there's one remembrance by one, I forget who it was, one lady, she was a hippie, like living on the beach or staying on the beach mostly during the day, very beautiful. And one day, it's in one of the Prabhupada remembrance videos. I forget her name. But when she was sitting, she was only 16 years old. And when she was sitting on the beach, and one day a flyer for the temple came, and the wind brought it to her, and it came to her, and she read it, and she went to the temple. And if I remember correctly, Prabhupada was there when she went to the temple. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, she was very sincere right away. She didn't, but it was about a year before she went back to the temple or began to take Krishna consciousness more seriously. And then either then or at the first meeting, I'm not sure, but she met Prabhupada. And then after a year, she was old enough to join the temple then, and she moved in. She got initiated very quickly, and it's there in one of the videos. But yeah, that's a really nice example of how Krishna, any of our literature, even just you say it's only a piece of paper, it's just a flyer, but Krishna blew it across the beach and it landed in her lap, and she became a devotee from that. But never underestimate the potency of going out and distributing Prabhupada's books. There are many stories like that, many stories. Yeah. 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 It's just, yeah. Yeah. Anything. Yeah. Anything about Krishna consciousness, any, especially not, printed material or any piece of prasadam, it contains all of Krishna consciousness within it. It's now Prabhupada was, her husband Gaurasundar had gone to Hawaii. He had been with his wife as Prabhupada's servant for a year, and he really didn't want to leave that Prabhupada's personal service, but Prabhupada told him he should go to Hawaii and start a temple there. So he did it. He didn't want to, but he did it. He surrendered. Now Prabhupada was suggesting that Govinda Dasi join her husband. She preferred, however, to remain with Prabhupada as secretary. She had been with him for over a year, but Prabhupada insisted that she should go. From New York, Purushottama had written asking to come and serve Prabhupada, and Prabhupada had consented. When Prabhupada had written the letter asking Purushottama to come, he had given it to Tamal Krishna, saying, "You'd better mail this. Don't give it to Govinda Dasi. She may refuse to mail it." Govinda Dasi wanted to stay, but Prabhupada ordered her, "You must live with your husband. That will make you happy. You will never be happy by staying aloof from one another. You must go there. So after weeks of procrastinating, Govinda Dasi reluctantly left her cherished service and went to join her husband. Already inconvenienced by Gaurasundar's departure, Prabhupada was now further inconvenienced by the loss of his trained secretary. But he wanted new centers. Rendering personal service as secretary or servant was not a very important function, he said. But to go somewhere in the world and preach Krishna consciousness required a divine spirit, and whoever had this opportunity should take it as the greatest blessing from Krishna. Of course, being personal servant to Prabhupada or secretary is an extremely important service, but Prabhupada was very confident, and it actually came to pass that whoever came to serve him, Prabhupada was always very capable of training them very quickly in how to massage and how to cook for him and all the necessary services. Yeah, but when Prabhupada wanted somebody to go to preach, open a temple or go to be GBC somewhere else or do something, oftentimes their servants or secretaries didn't want to go. But Prabhupada, he told them to go. Then Upendra, whoever had this opportunity to preach should take it as the greatest blessing from Krishna. Then Upendra received a prison sentence for a previous, anybody guess? Previous offense. Previous drug offense from before he was a devotee. They catch up with you sometimes after a while. And you might get away for a year or a few years, but usually they catch up with you. That's the what? What? Ah, yeah. Well, we're reading it again. Received a prison sentence for a previous drug conviction years ago, before he had joined Prabhupada. At first, the sentence was 3 months, but then it was reduced to 1 month in the county jail. When the day came to leave, Upendra packed his bag and went in to say goodbye to Prabhupada. Oh, Prabhupada smiled, "You're going now?" "Yes, Prabhupada," Upendra said with a broken voice. Then he asked, "Prabhupada, will you please chant 1 round with me?" Prabhupada looked at him steadily and said, "You should know that I'm always chanting with you." That's a lesson for all of us. We're always chanting with it, always chanting with our spiritual master. Upendra began to cry. I think he was only about 20 years old, which is pretty young and not very mature. But Upendra began to cry, and Prabhupada reached over, patting his back and ruffling his hair. "No, don't be afraid," Prabhupada assured him. "It is Krishna's mercy. They will think you are a pious boy and let you out after a few days. Go on now, chant Hare Krishna and be happy." Upendra took heart and left for jail. After 10 days, he was released and returned to Prabhupada's personal service. Even a day in prison is a very heavy thing. If you've ever been locked up for anything, even for a few hours, you know that it's a really heavy thing. They put you in this cell and the door closes and it locks, and it dawns on you that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going, I'm here, and that's all there is to it. It's a really heavy feeling. But we're all in prison. We're all in the prison of the material world. It's just that we're so used to being in prison in the material world that we've come to just accept it. This is my life. I live in prison. Like people who have been in prison for 15 or 20 or 30 years, they get used to it. And that's like, this is where I live. I live in prison. So that's all of our situations. We're all so used to being here and suffering and being controlled at every moment, every step of our existence, down to each breath we take, that we don't even think about it anymore. But he was released and returned to Prabhupada's personal service. At this time, Prabhupada began speaking to Upendra about preaching in Australia. A devotee in New York had written Prabhupada about starting a center in Australia, mentioning Upendra's name. At first, Upendra was dead set against it, but Prabhupada smiled gently and said, "Yes, I think you should go." "But I'm doing your cooking," Upendra protested. "Oh, anyone can cook," Prabhupada replied. "You are doing better service in Seattle." "You're not joking then?" Upendra asked. No, Prabhupada wasn't joking. And Upendra left for Australia. Thus, Prabhupada gradually depleted his own personal staff in Los Angeles, but he continued to use the Los Angeles temple as a stage of introducing new important aspects of Krishna consciousness. One such precedent had been the downtown chanting party. Another was full-scale deity worship in the temple. It was in Los Angeles at this time that Prabhupada began a full day's schedule of artis and offering of prasadam to the deities, just as in the great Vaishnava temples of India. Jiva Goswami, a great follower and scholar of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, had written that although chanting Hare Krishna was sufficient in itself for going back to Godhead, because people in the present age are restless, they should also worship the deity for purification. Since the deity worship involved sewing dresses for the deities, decorating and cleaning the deity's altar, and cooking for the deities, and cleaning the kitchen, Prabhupada turned to some of his women disciples who seemed particularly inclined. And Jiva Goswami said, chanting Hare Krishna is enough, but people in Kali Yuga are very restless, and the regulated deity worship really helps in um, habituating all of us to regular service. It helps control the mind and make us less restless. And yeah, so it's very, both things are central to ISKCON preaching, deity worship, and Sankirtan, going out and preaching. One of the women was Shilavati. She was older than most of the other women and had joined the Krishna consciousness movement with her two sons. When Prabhupada saw her eagerness to help him establish the deity worship, he asked her to come to his apartment, where he explained to her the system of worshiping the deities with 6 daily artis. The first arti, Mangal Arti, should be held 1.5 hours before sunrise, but the deities must first be awakened, then offered milk sweets and fruit, and then at Arti consecutively offered burning incense, burning camphor, water in a conch shell, a clean handkerchief, a fragrant flower, a yak-tail whisk, and a peacock feather. The devotee offering the articles was the pujari. the pujari would ring a bell in his left hand while offering each object with his right hand, moving the article in clockwise circles before the deity. Prabhupada had to teach everything because hardly anybody had been to India. Practically nobody knew what an arti was or how to offer. Nobody knew anything. And Prabhupada was introducing things gradually. Breakfast is offered to the deities a few hours after Mangal Arti. Afterward, all the devotees can take the remnants of that offering as the deity's prasadam. Then another arti is performed at noon, after which the devotees take the remnants for lunch. And it was very um, pretty normal in those days, early days, and not just early days, but several years later, when any devotees who weren't out on Sankirtan, uh, quite a few devotees used to be in the temple for kirtan at the noon arti. They sing Vajabhakata Vatsala Shikha and then chant Hare Krishna. It was very, and of course, almost all the devotees were in the temple room for Sundar Artik. It was a big function, a major function of the day. And then a Bhagavad Gita class immediately after the kirtan. And that's one thing that really impressed me when I first started going to the temple, is that they'd be in the temple room at 6 o'clock for kirtan. It was, very enthusiastic kirtan with like 40 or 50 devotees there. And then as soon as the conch shell blew and the Prema Dhvani and the Nishingadev prayers, then, as soon as that was over, all the devotees just sat down, like in a class, like 10-year-old kids who were still pretty well behaved in a class in school. They just sit down on the floor, very quiet, and open their books and in a Bhagavad Gita class every night. And oftentimes after Bhagavad Gita class, uh, here in Boston, I'm sure in other temples too, a Nectar of Devotion class, which was preceded, Bhagavad Gita class was preceded by Jaya Radha Madhava, and Nectar of Devotion class was preceded by um, the first verse of the Sad Goswami Ashtaka, Krishna Kirtana. Everyone would sing that responsively together. And then what really amazed me was just like a minute before, all like 40, 50 devotees were dancing, jumping up and down, and there wasn't going in circles in Boston Temple back then, but everybody was really, enthusiastically participating in the kirtan. And then it's over, and then boom, everybody sat down, good little boys and girls, and just was attentive to class. And it really impressed me that, yeah, these people are so enthusiastic and chanting and dancing, but they're really intent on the importance of study of the Shastras too. I never. Well, kirtan, I'm not sure, but I think it was in the old temple was either 6 o'clock or 6:30, and then at 7 o'clock, as soon as it was over, after a half an hour, they immediately have the Bhagavad Gita and Nectar of Devotion class, and then yeah, and after another. It took about, probably lasted about 45 minutes. It was no together, probably. Yeah, probably about that. Maybe an hour, but they weren't long classes, no more than a half hour each, and maybe a little less. And then everybody go up to the prasadam room for hot milk and reading of Krishna books, and then go. And devotees weren't staying up late and talking and hanging around. They would pretty much immediately just lie down and go to sleep and get up early for Mangal Arati. It was pretty regulated. Generally, all the cleaning, the kitchen cleaning, had been done before, and so devotees weren't up late, usually cleaning the kitchen, but they were just go to bed after hot milk and Krishna book. Okay, I think I'll stop there. Yeah. Prabhupada called it a Krishna conscious sandwich. Is a strong morning program, strong evening program, the study of the Shastras and Kirtan, and during the day, there's a lot of service. And he could read during the day too, if devotees were inclined, and most devotees did read some during the day, and some more than others. But mostly during the day, it was all, getting ready, going out on Sankirtan, going to distribute books, cooking, cleaning, worshiping the deities. Mostly it was all kinds of active service all day long. And that's the other thing I remember specifically about the evening program at the old temple was the brahmacharis lived on the third floor, and the temple room was on the second floor, and there was wooden stairs going from the third floor to the second floor, and like 5 minutes before it was time for Sundar Artik, you'd hear like 30 men running down the stairs, young men, big, strong men, or small, strong men, running down the stairs like a herd of wild animals. And you could hear that, they were, and, yeah, and everybody was in the normal thing was everyone is in for there for Mangalarti and Sundarati before the curtains open, not after the curtains opened or straggling in two or three at a time, but everybody was there before the curtains opened. Little things that were normal back then that aren't so normal now, but they were good things. They're very good things. Okay, let's stop there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is
This one microphone, this mic and this one will
next to the phone.
yeah, so that there is more better voice.
I was thinking of maybe trying something like that for Harinam.
Audience only for the live people will be able to hear. Yeah, it's not loud to everyone.
It won't go to the speaker and broadcast.
I don't know. This is not speak. We have to connect the other part to the speaker.
A receiver.
Yeah, we'll try to check that.
I'm just thinking of different ideas for her.
Yeah, I thought.
We have a good system already